Hey everyone, it's a rainy West Coast Canadian day here today, Friday, so I thought I would take a few minutes and make a quick short video on tips and tricks for P6 Primavera if you're using it as a scheduler for shutdowns, turnarounds, outages, or pit stops. Just got a quick tip here for you about productivity factor and original duration and the ability to do some what if scenarios in terms of the number of resources required, the amount of float remaining, and the productivity factor. So I wanted to touch here on what I call chronological time, which most people refer to as original duration on the actual activities. You'll see here that I've changed my original duration to chronological time, and I don't touch this field. So I don't use this field to input data. I allow the computer to calculate this number based on the amount of time that I have estimated down at the resource level. So you'll see here that I have a crew of 2, so my settings, just for your sake, I'm using resource dependent because shutdowns, turnarounds, outages, pit stops are resource dependent. We don't use task dependent on every activity because we're not building EPC projects like acid plants or gas plants or hospitals. This is a very intense, very resource restricted events where we can only put so many people into a unit. We can only put so many people on an activity. So it's very resource dependent. We want to calculate the man hours based on the duration of the time on tools, so the direct benchmark estimate for tool time, and the crew size. So units per time is crew size. And I'm using physical percent complete. And you'll see here in my activity calendars, I create what I call my process availability from Lotto to PSSR, the handover from operations, and the hand back to maintenance. Here you can see that I have a flare system. You can see up here in the actual hash on the curtain that my flare system runs from day 8 to day 20. And all the activities associated with the flare system automatically are assigned to this window. And here you can see the available float, and I'll just do I'm just going to schedule for a moment and reset things back to where they belong. So anything in that flare system will fall into here. So getting back to the actual resources, you'll see I have my duration, I have my crew size, which calculates my man hours. Then I can do my updates and activities here where I look at the percent complete. How much did I earn? My earn can never be more than planned, but my actual, it took longer either because of poor tool time, poor estimating when I planned this work, and I'm showing my productivity factor here, or my performance of, in this case, actuals 24 against 16. It's a 66%. It's poor performance. 72 is a little bit better for the pipe fitter. Now remember, my pipe fitter and my welder in this case are my P1s. These are my movie stars. These are my P2s under labor. So I'm more concerned about keeping my P1 movie stars busy and supporting them with my direct support, like laborers and riggers, scaffolders, for example. Here, the welder has a productivity of 1 because there was an earned value of 8 against 8 estimated, actual 8, so productivity factor of 1. Same with the cost performance index, showed up as 1, which is good. A little less good or poor, but poor because our actual costs are higher than the budgeted costs. So again, we're looking at overall shift by shift, what was our productivity factor applied to the benchmark estimate versus the performance factor measurement. So I want to just show you quickly here that, again, chronological time was the old original duration. This is the original duration under resources. I don't touch this one. You'll see here that in this particular case, the chronological time for this activity is 17.5 hours of time. So this is my calendar time, or my 24-hour time period chronologically. And here we have a duration on this one was intended to be 32 hours, but now we're at 83 hours. And the reason for that, now let me just level to show you how this recalculates. Now what I've got is a because of a productivity factor here on this particular resource, pipe fitter and welder, these are on a 6x2x10 at a 1.4 productivity factor. So the change in my durations on chronological time are going to change, which is going to burn up quite a bit of float, or it's going to take up a lot of the float in this window. So I'm just going to go back to my resources and show you that on my P1, so here's my P1s, my P2s are my laborers, riggers, scaffolders, for example, and down here I would have my P3s, like my indirect support, my cranes, bundle puller, safety watch, for example, and then finally my P4s. So I look at these as basically movie stars, cast and crew, the supporting production crew, and then producers, for example. So just a bit of a fun terminology that I use. So I'm going to go in here and change the productivity factor, and I'm going to reset it to just a 1-on-1. So I'm going to say that 7 to 12 at 1, and I'm going to just fill this down. When I go back to look at my situation now, when I re-level, I can see now that I have a lot more float available, and the hours from a chronological time line up exactly what they do here because it's hour for hour. So when I look at the actual histogram or requirements for these particular resources, I can see that I have my available crew sizes here. For example, I have 4 crew here. When I calculate based on the hours available per time period, so I have my 4 crew here, and I can quite easily get this work done with these crew of 4. But if I was to go back in here and reduce this crew of 4 down to 2, obviously we're going to see that something's going to change here. I'm going to be over allocated. And so if I'm going to level, again, I'm leveling on my P1s, on my movie stars. I don't level on indirects. I don't level on these. I expect to keep a movie stars busy, and I expect the computer to tell me how many support resources I need. How many laborers do I need to keep these guys busy? So I'm not trying to save money on laborers. Laborers I can get. I'm trying to save money and keep these people busy. That's my goal. So when I level this out now, I'm able to determine that I can get all this work done now with the crew of 2 resources. But again, I have no productivity factor applied here. This is the assumption people make, that I have a good plan and I have lots of float, because they haven't calculated productivity factor. So let's go back in and change this productivity factor now and say that at a productivity factor of 2, which is fairly realistic when we get into an open phase, for example, and we can go back now and re-level this to demonstrate, because now it's showing that, hey, I don't have enough people if my productivity factor changes. I'm automatically over allocated. So now I'm going to go back and re-level and say, well, do I have enough time? Well, yeah, I can do the work now, but look at, I've kind of burned up a lot of float. I'm still within here, but if things start getting a little bit touchy here, I'm going to be in trouble. You'll see here that the time has changed in terms of chronological. So I still have a activity with 12-hour duration, but it's going to take 60 hours of overall chronological time duration to get this work done because of that productivity factor. Okay? So let's go back in and let me just change this productivity factor. So then I can go in and I can change productivity factor. I'm going to put a 1.4 for everyone on all of this work for now, just to test it. So I do a fill down, 1.4 productivity factor, that on a 6x2x10. So that means I'm not working Sundays. I'm working 2 shifts, 10 hours, but I know that I can only do 60% tool time, which is fairly world class, really, 60%. So now the computer says, okay, well, how many people do you have? Well, I have 2 pipe fitter movie stars, 2 boiler maker movie stars, and I have 1 welder. I can go and change these, and I can start running all of my what-if scenarios for all of these activities and events to see what kind of a picture I'm going to get in terms of resource availability and float, remaining float. So I'm just going to go in and, again, schedule this. And now you'll see that I'm scheduling based on the priorities, so it's scheduling in the right order. It's utilizing the resources correctly, but it's using up quite a bit of float. If I was to add in any more activities here, I would have to increase my resources to be able to get this work done in this time frame. So you can see here that we're not working on Sundays. I have a crew of 1 from a welder perspective, from safety watch, from pipe fitters, I have 2, but I am going to have to go in and change my configuration. We always have to, Primavera doesn't automatically do this. We have to set it up so that we can demonstrate. Now you can see that I have 2, then I don't work Sunday, then I have 2. Okay? So now if I go back and schedule this, you'll see that all of this work has been set up, ready to schedule. There is no relationships between here and milestones because I'm using this window. So this is my process availability window in the WBS structure. You'll see here that my flare system is available. Operations handed it over to me, locked out, tagged out on the 13th, and they want it back again. PSSR'd back to operations on May 25th. So this is my window of opportunity here. Okay, you'll see here I go from day 8 to day 20. When I go now into level this work to start looking at optimization, so I can start to optimize based on PF, I can optimize based on crew size, and what I'm looking for is from a heat map perspective and SimOps, I'm looking at running a bunch of different scenarios to see my triangle of chronological time, number of man hours or resources, and the budget. So I want the lowest cost, the shortest duration, and the least amount of resources. And I want the flexibility to go in here and at the same time be able to change the priority and make this now a high priority, and perhaps this one I'm going to make as a lower priority. And now when I re-level, it's going to change the way that this work is being scheduled, and it's going to start to try to do this one, then it's going to do the third one, then the lowest priority at the end. Okay, so I'm just going to go back one more time, change productivity factor, and say there is no productivity factor. Everything is one-on-one, which we know is not realistic at all, but I have that opportunity. So I fill this down, I go back and I re-level, and I configure for the 24-hour period that I'm working. And again, then I can see that I have sufficient resources to do this work, okay, from a total perspective, what I've got here to look at, okay? So that's just a bit of a tip for you, just to understand that here's the difference, you know, when I'm looking at the PF, remember, PF is the productivity factor applied to a benchmark estimate to make sure that I can make up for non-productive time of walking time, permit time, safety meetings, all the other complexities and things that are assigned to it. And at the same time, I want to be able to calculate my PF, which is my PF here is tool time efficiency. So again, you'll see here that this job is completed by the movie stars, welder, pipe fitter, and the indirect support casting crew of a laborer. They were planned for 8 hours, a crew of 2, and a crew of 1, 16-hour man hours, 16 man hours, 8 man hours. That'll be my total man hours if I go to look at my summary of labor units and man hours. Okay? And when I go back to look at the actual resources in terms of productivity, it actually costs me 24 hours in time. Again, you can never earn more than planned. So this, when it's 100% complete, this earned will match the man hours. When we calculate, though, earned over actual, my PF is 66%. Again, here, 22 hours over, 16 over 22 hours for a 72. Welders came in right on time. It's a productivity factor of 1. Here's my cost, my original estimated budgeted cost, and what it actually cost me, which also showing my CPI. So in this particular case, either due to poor planning or due to poor performance, productivity and tool time or issues, something went wrong, I can also start to track now on why did I get this discrepancy. But the key is to start looking at float burn and resource utilization, because I'm burning a lot of money every day, and I want to make sure that money is being spent on my movie stars, and I'm getting value for the dollar, whether it's people or rental equipment, vac trucks, whatever. I want to know that I'm getting value for my money. So I'll leave it. I'll try to edit this a little bit, but otherwise, I'm going to enjoy the rest of my rainy weekend here in Vancouver. So enjoy the rest of your day and have a great weekend. Be safe. Thanks, everyone. Ciao.